but it is very logical.
There's that magic word again. Does your logic find this fascinating, Mr. Spock?
Our logic is to be illogical. That is our advantage. Mr. Spock, it is time. The explosive.
Very well, Captain.
Logic suggests.
Logic? My God, the man's talking about logic. We're talking about universal Armageddon.
Commence primary ignition.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. This is episode 8 of the Logic Blaster podcast. And the subject today is going to be Magic the Gathering. Before we get into the topic, I want to briefly give a big thank you to the various people who've subscribed. I'm now over 1,100 subscribers, and very appreciative to all the new people who've signed on as subscribers. I'm very happy to have you here and glad you're checking out my podcast. I'm probably going to hit around 1,500 by the end of the year, so I'm very excited for that. So something to look forward to. So today we're going to take a look at 20 cards from my Magic the Gathering collection. And before we take a look at them, I wanted to give you a little backstory in terms of where these cards come from, how my collection got started, and so forth. So I was introduced to this game by a friend of a friend in the early 2000s. He was interested in getting some more of his buddies sort of into the game, and so we did several drafts, and he actually gifted me a whole bunch of cards that were sort of extras from his collection. He had just a huge amount of cards, so he was more than willing to give a bunch away if he could get some more players involved. So it was a pretty smart strategy, because it definitely got me interested in the game. Helped me learn the game, just having a bunch of cards to actually play around with and build decks with. Even though they were commons, he was like, well, these are heavily playable. So, if you build a deck outright, even with commons, you could actually create a pretty killer deck. And supplementing them with newer cards that we got from the drafts that were uncommon and rare, he basically explained to me, essentially you'd be able to build out a very good deck, once you've acquired more cards from the draft. So, and yes, it was definitely true. And I never got particularly good at the game, I don't think, but I definitely learned how to play, and I couldn't compete at his level because he'd been playing for quite a few years and was spending a lot more money on acquiring very powerful cards, and he was way more of a strategist too. So like he definitely dominated most of the gameplay, although some of his other friends actually were quite good at it as well. So the cards that I have in my collection are all from the early 2000s and late 1990s. The oldest cards I have are from Revised Edition, so that's 1994. And then the newest ones that I have are from Champions of Kamigawa, which would be 2004. So my collection spans roughly a 10-year time period. And some of these have value, and then some of them clearly do not. What I've noticed is many of them seem underpowered by comparison to modern Magic cards. So the decks that I've actually built out, which some of them I still have assembled, my guess is that they won't necessarily work in competition with modern Magic decks, just because they're not built for the game the way it's played now. What I'm showing you here is how I store my cards. Pretty simple storage method, and they stay in pretty good shape this way. Simple, just put them in a box, and as long as you don't really disturb them too much, they stay in pretty good shape. And I'm also showing you here a tournament pack from the time period. So at this point in time, I believe Hasbro had already purchased Wizards of the Coast, so that happened in 1999. And Hasbro has made some interesting decisions with Magic the Gathering over the years, and some of them good, some of them bad. And so we're not going to get into too much of that. That's a topic for another time. But it definitely has caused some controversies among sort of the hardcore Magic enthusiasts in terms of Hasbro's overall handling of Wizards of the Coast. So But we're here to talk about these cards in particular and what they're worth from a collector's perspective. So I'm not going to talk too much about gameplay in particular, mainly because I'm not really that much of an expert in terms of playing Magic the Gathering. So I'm going to talk about these from a collector, and this is a collector's channel for the most part, and a pop culture channel. So that's where I'm coming at this. And I've priced out these cards using several websites, including Card Kingdom and also TCG Player, and at least one other site. And I noticed that the prices do vary pretty wildly in terms of how much these are claimed to be worth. If I went solely by Card Kingdom, the entire collection of these 20 cards that I'm going to show you would be worth $265. But are they really worth that much? That's the question. Because, if you go to TCG Player, it's, in total, it varies quite a bit. So we're going to go through each one of these cards and we're going to talk about them. So let's get into it. Okay, so this first card I'm going to show you is a basic land card, and you may be kind of surprised that I'm actually showing this, but this is a foil edition of the card, and it is from 7th edition, so quite a while ago, and although it's not worth a lot, according to Card Kingdom, it's worth about $3.59. My guess is you can probably get it for a lot less than that, although I had trouble finding it. Looking in various other places. Basically, Card Kingdom was the only one where I could actually find a decent price for it. But my guess is you can get it cheaper. My advice on the basic land cards is if you can find ones that have the foil treatment, particularly ones from the earlier series, or ones from earlier series that aren't even foil, don't necessarily sleep on those, because you'd be surprised at some of those older land cards, particularly if they're in good condition, particularly if you can find them from the Alpha or Beta series, the first two series of Magic the Gathering cards, could be worth quite a bit of money. So pay attention when you're taking a look at whatever land cards that you have or ones that you come across, what series they're from, and some of them may be worth quite a bit of money. So surprisingly, because it's just land. So, but this is the one I wanted to show you because it has that foil treatment, and I think it looks really cool. And like I said, it does have some value above the standard land card that doesn't have the foil treatment. Next card up is the Elvis Vanguard, and this is from the Onslaught series. And text says, whenever another elf comes into play, put a +1/+1 counter on an Elvish Vanguard. So essentially, this is very good for an elf deck, and I have an elf deck that I actually assembled in my collection from this time period, and so this card is actually very useful as a card within that deck. Pretty cool looking card, and this one, according to Card Kingdom, is worth $3.99, but if you go to TCG, it's valued at as little as 40 cents. So yeah, you probably can pick this up for fairly cheap. I don't think it has a ton of value necessarily, but it depends on who you talk to. Next card we're going to talk about is New Frontiers, and this is from Odyssey. And the text says, each player may search his or her library for up to X basic land cards and then put them into play tapped. Then each player who searched his or her library this way shuffles it. So pretty interesting card, and it's sort of a kind of a land building strategy, I guess. But interesting sort of approach, and I found it quite interesting. And this one was valued at around $4.99 on Card Kingdom, and then around $2.47 on TCG. So again, a variation there, but definitely getting more valuable in terms of the cards that we're talking about. Next card we're going to talk about is Caller of the Claw. And the text on this one is from Legions, and basically says, you may play Caller of the Claw anytime you could play an instant. So certainly interesting in terms of being able to play it when it's not the normal time you would play a creature card. When Caller of the Claw comes into play, put a 2/2 green bear creature token into play for each non-token creature put into your graveyard from play this turn. So kind of a complicated card to play, but pretty interesting. I like the artwork on this too. And basically, according to Card Kingdom, this is worth about $5.49. And then according to TCG, it's worth about $1.03. So one thing about TCG I noticed on their site, they actually have what the lowest cost is that you could probably acquire it at, but also the market value price. So those two prices are shown with each card. So market value is probably a little more accurate, but who knows? I mean, it's all sort of speculation. Basically, cards are worth whatever people are willing to pay for them. So, it varies depending on the individual. Next card up, we got Wirewood Lodge, and this is another one from Onslaught. And basically, you can tap it, add 1 colorless mana to your mana pool, or you can pay 1 forest, tap it, and untap target elf. So once again, for an elf deck, this one would be quite useful. And again, this is a land card, so but has multiple uses in terms of what you can do with it. So I'm almost positive I have this in my elf deck. Pretty interesting card, and can be quite useful for that. And Wirewood Lodge is $5.49 on Card Kingdom and $2.99 on TCG. So say not a super high value card, but definitely something that might be worth picking up. Okay, next card we're going to look at is Far Wanderings, and this one is from Torment, and this one also has the foil treatment. The text reads, search your library for a basic land card and put that card into play tapped. Then shuffle your library. At Threshold, instead, search your library for 3 basic land cards and then put them into play tapped. Then shuffle your library. And Threshold happens when you have 7 or more cards in your graveyard. Now, I'm not sure in terms of the current rules for Magic the Gathering whether or not Threshold is still a thing. But in terms of the playability and usefulness of this card, it does become way more powerful basically when you reach Threshold. And the value of this particular card has a lot to do with the foil treatment. And so this one was valued at $5.59 on Card Kingdom. And I essentially couldn't find it on TCG or various other sites. So in the foil treatment anyway. So whether or not that's necessarily true or whether or not you can get it cheaper, I'm not really too sure. But I think it's a cool looking card. I like the artwork a lot, and could potentially be useful in a deck. Next card we're going to look at is Chain of Smog, and this is also from Onslaught. I noticed actually in my collection there's quite a few cards from Onslaught, quite a few from Mirrodin, and also a few other sets during that particular time period when myself and the other guys who were into the game were doing the drafts. So Darksteel was another one I believe that we did a draft with. So I have quite a few Darksteel cards as well. So with Chain of Smog, basically sorcery, target player discards 2 cards from his or her hand. That player may copy the spell and may choose a new target for that copy. So this is sort of one of those chain reaction kind of cards. Kind of interesting, and I don't know how necessarily well they work. I don't recall ever using this card in a deck, but it does have some value. On Card Kingdom, this one is $6.49, and I believe on TCG it was $3.40. So definitely has a little bit of value to it, and I did notice there were several of these chain cards that had some value to them. So kind of interesting. Next card up, we got Stand Still. So this is an enchantment, and this is from Odyssey. And the text reads, when a player plays a spell, sacrifice Stand Still. If you do, each of that player's opponents draws 3 cards. So again, this is one of those cards that I don't think I've ever used in a deck. It's sort of one of those enchantments where it's sort of like it depends on how it's used, whether or not you're targeting yourself as the player played the spells, or or one of your opponents. So I think I consider it kind of a tricky card to use. And I don't recall ever using it in a deck. So this one is also valued at $6.49 on Card Kingdom and $2.80 on TCG. So once again, one of those cards that where the value varies. Next up, we got Chain of Vapor. So this is another instant, and this is from Onslaught. Text reads, return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. Then that permanent's controller may sacrifice a land. If the player does, he or she may copy the spell and may choose a new target for that copy. So once again, it's one of these kind of chain events kind of things that could potentially create kind of chaos within the game. Again, I don't think I've ever used it, and I'm not sure if I would necessarily want to have that kind of cascading effect going on in the game, whether or not that would necessarily be desirable. Again, this one is worth $6.79 on Card Kingdom and $4.24 on TCG. Next card up is Viridian Joyner, and this is another foil card, and this one is from Mirrodin, and the text reads, tap, add amount of forest to your mana pool equal to Viridian Joyner's power. So eventually you could build up Viridian Joyner by boosting its power, and then basically you would get mana from Viridian Joyner. So pretty useful card, and I really like the foil treatment on this. What you'll notice is on certain foil cards, the foil treatment goes all the way through the artwork, and then on other ones, it really just deals with the border area. So it really depends on the series, when it was released, how the foil treatment is actually done. But again, this one I believe has value because of the foil treatment. So when I looked it up on Card Kingdom, this one was listed as $6.99, and again, I couldn't find the equivalent value on, I don't think, any of the other sites in terms of a foil version of the card. So it's kind of up in the air whether or not it has that amount of value for real. But I basically know, what it's worth according to Card Kingdom. Okay, next card up is Test of Endurance, and this is from Judgment, and this is an enchantment. Basically says, at the beginning of your upkeep, if you have 50 or more life, you win the game. So pretty straightforward there, and I guess the main thing this is vulnerable to is anything that could destroy all enchantments could basically get rid of this card. An interesting kind of card, an interesting concept, where the circumstances are that you just win the game based on, having 50 life. Again, the value on this one, $7.49 according to Card Kingdom, and then $2.25 according to TCG. Cool concept for a card. Again, this is a rare enchantment from Judgment. Okay, next one up is Anger. This one is also from Judgment. This is a creature, and this one has haste. And once again, I don't really know if haste is still a thing in Magic the Gathering. Essentially, the text reads, as long as Anger is in your graveyard and you control a mountain, creatures you control have haste. So not only does it have haste, but once it dies and remains in your graveyard, all of your creatures have haste. So once again, I don't know if haste is still a thing in Magic, but I know you could definitely gain some advantage putting this in a creature deck, and a red deck in particular. So pretty interesting card, and this one was valued at $7.99 on Card Kingdom and $2.91 according to TCG. Next one up, we're taking a look at another one from Judgment, and this is called Seed Time. This is an instant, and basically the text reads, play Seed Time only during your turn. Take an extra turn after this one if an opponent played a blue spell this turn. So essentially, the usefulness of this card really is dictated by what's going on with one of your opponents, whether or not they're playing, cards that involve blue cards. So yeah, if you end up, in a card game where this card isn't going to be useful if your opponent's not playing blue spells, yeah, it could end up being kind of useful or useless, in other words. So, but Seed Time definitely has some value. $8.49 according to Card Kingdom, and then $4 according to TCG. Next one we're going to talk about is Lana War Waste. This is another land, and this one is actually from Apocalypse. And basically you can tap it and add 1 colorless mana to your mana pool, or you can tap it and add either a swamp or a forest to your mana pool, and then it deals 1 damage to you. So essentially this is one of those kinds of things where if you're not worried about your overall health, if you have ways to kind of rejuvenate your health, and you have basically a black-green deck, Lana War Waste could potentially be useful for that. What I have noticed is a number of these sort of unique lands that have multicolor or special features. Some of them actually have been banned in certain types of gameplay for Magic the Gathering currently. So again, I haven't looked into which ones of the ones I'm showing you are still usable in current Magic gameplay, or whether or not they've been banned. I haven't really researched that because I'm not really playing the game currently. I'm only looking at these from a collector's perspective. So Lana War Waste, according to Card Kingdom, is worth $11.99, and then according to TCG, $3.49. So definitely getting up there in terms of value for some of these cards. Next one we're going to take a look at is Karmic Justice. This is from Odyssey, and this is an enchantment. Whenever a spell or ability an opponent controls destroys a non-creature permanent you control, you may destroy a target permanent that opponent controls. So it's kind of like a reversal effect, hence the word karmic. And once again, this is a rare card from that series. And according to Card Kingdom, it's worth $12.99, and TCG has it $7.07. So definitely has some value to it, and I like the artwork on it too. That sort of shattered stained glass look is pretty interesting. Next one up, we got Undead Warchief. So this is a zombie, and this particular one is from Scourge. And basically, zombie spells you play cost 1 less to play, and zombies you control get +2/+1. So if you're building out a zombie deck, this one would definitely be useful. And I definitely like the artwork on this. That creature that's depicted on Undead Warchief is really cool looking. And according to Card Kingdom, this one's worth $13.99. And then according to TCG, it's worth $5.54. So cool card, and definitely if you're building out a zombie deck, could potentially be very useful. Okay, we're down to the final 4 in this collection, and next one up is Confusion in the Ranks. And this is from Mirrodin, and once again you can see this has the foil treatment on it. So this is an enchantment. Whether an artifact, creature, or enchantment comes into play, its controller chooses target permanent another player controls and shares a type with it. Exchange control of those permanents. So this particular card I've never actually used, mainly because I'm confused about how to use it. Confusion in the ranks for sure could potentially cause vast amounts of chaos in the game. So yeah, I've never used it, but very excited to have the foil version of it. And when I looked it up on Card Kingdom, they listed it as $15.99, and I was not able to find the foil equivalent version on TCG or various other places. So I'm not sure if that price is necessarily reliable, but it's the only one I could particularly find. And I did go on eBay for these ones where I couldn't find them on other places other than Card Kingdom, and it did seem to pan out in terms of the value, what people were selling them for on eBay. So this particular rare from Mirrodin does seem to have some value, at least in the foil version. So that's pretty cool. Next up, we've got Grave Pact, and this is from 8th edition. So one of the older cards, and you can see this one has the white border as well. So this is an enchantment. Whenever a creature you control is put into a graveyard from play, each other player sacrifices a creature. So definitely pretty powerful in terms of what it could potentially do. And I love the artwork on this too, that sort of bluish glowing Grim Reaper pointing at a grave. That's pretty cool. And in terms of value on this one, because it is the 8th edition version of it, according to Card Kingdom, this was $37.99, and according to TCG, $20 and change. So definitely getting up there in terms of value for these kinds of cards, and definitely worth taking care of this one. Even if it's only worth $20, it's still pretty decent in terms of value. Next one up, we're going to look at is Sliver Overlord, and this one is from Scourge, and you can see this is a multicolor card, so kind of a challenge to play. I've never used it in a deck, mainly because you need to have all the colors in order to actually play it. So this is a Sliver, and if you play 3 mana, search your library for a Sliver card, reveal that card, put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. Or you play 3 mana and gain control of target Sliver. So essentially, I would assume this is mainly useful in a Sliver deck. Because you would need to have Slivers in your deck in order to use the particular features of it. And pretty powerful on its own as a 7/7. And this is a rare as well, obviously from Scourge. And I looked this up online, and according to Card Kingdom, this one was valued at $44.99, and then according to TCG, $21. So again, getting up there in terms of overall value, and definitely seems like it is a worthwhile card. I did also look this one up on eBay, and it was selling for quite a bit of money from various sellers. So yeah, another pretty valuable card, and one that I've never been able to play. So this one is completely unplayed, so it's actually in pretty good condition. It's basically just been sitting in a box, so that's pretty cool. Okay, last card up, Rampant Growth from 7th edition, and you might be surprised by this one because this is a common from 7th edition, but because of the foil treatment, it actually gives it some value. According to Card Kingdom, this was valued at $47.99, and there was no equivalent value that I could find on TCG, so I'm pretty much relying on the only source available. I did look it up on eBay, and it was selling for quite a bit of money also on eBay. So, and it has everything to do with the foil treatment, because the regular version of this card I don't think is worth very much at all. But with the foil treatment, can make the difference between a card really not having a ton of value and having quite a bit of value. So something to keep in mind if you have older Magic cards in your collection and you're looking to see if they are valuable. Pick out those foils in particular and look them up and see if they do indeed have value. It's not always the case. Certainly a lot of commons, even the foil treatment won't necessarily change the value very much in terms of, if it's just a common card and, it's not necessarily sought after even with the foil. Yeah, you're not necessarily going to find a big boost in value. But with Rampant Growth, it did seem to have a significant boost. So this is sorcery. Search your library for a basic land card, put that card into play tapped, then shuffle your library. Pretty straightforward. Could potentially be useful. And I don't know how popular this particular card was, but definitely the foil version does seem to be collectible. So that is the collection of the 20 cards, and so that's them right there. And getting to the question of, are they worth $200 or more? Well, it really depends on who you talk to. And according to Card Kingdom, they're worth $265. According to TCG, which I added up all the various prices, the lowest amount that I could find, and I couldn't find all of them on TCG, so I'm kind of going with whatever lowest prices I could find in various places. It was about $100 less, so about $165. So if you think in terms of the cost of shipping, if you were to try and assemble this collection, you'd have to pay for the shipping costs and so forth. So, you're going to tack on something for that. And let's say it's somewhere in between $265 and $165. Yeah, this collection is probably worth around $200. So, currently anyway. Whether or not it holds that value, I don't know. And it really will depend a lot on whether or not, Hasbro decides to do reprints of it in upcoming sets. I've noticed they're doing that quite a bit, where they're actually reproducing the card almost verbatim, with a few changes in a brand new set and re-releasing it. So how that impacts the value of the original version, it might help it, it might hurt it, I don't really know. I'm assuming it's probably going to hurt it. If you can acquire the same exact card, for much cheaper, are you really going to want to add, the more expensive version to your collection just to have it? Yeah, that's the question. Let me know in the comments if you're interested in seeing more of my original Magic card collection. Again, these are older cards. Some of them are still available in terms of reissues, reimagined versions of them, and I have a lot of commons from that time period between 1994 and 2004. I haven't gone through my entire box of commons to see if there's other ones that might be valuable. I'm assuming probably not, but you never know. I did pick out all the foil ones, and I have gone and looked those up. But in terms of the regular versions, I haven't. So who knows? I may do another one of these videos where I talk about some more valuable cards. But for the most part, these were the ones that I was able to pick out, which I considered to be probably the most valuable ones that I have currently in my collection. I am considering buying some newer sets. I was talking with, some other YouTubers who are experts in Magic the Gathering, collecting cards for quite some time. And they had made some recommendations to me in terms of fairly new sets that might be worth picking up. So I may do that at some point, depending on the cost, and may add some newer stuff to my collection and sort of enhance what I already have. And in terms of future episodes, I am going to do an episode about The Mandalorian, all 3 seasons. So those have all concluded. I've watched all of them, and I'm interested in giving you my thoughts on that at some point in the future. There will also be more G.I. Joe content coming in future episodes of the podcast as well. So some things to look forward to in the future. So until next time, I hope you're having a great day, and thank you so much for watching.